Stranded on a barren mountaintop and surrounded by violent Islamic extremists. Thousands of Yazidis have spent 10 days looking death in the face. Those that have made it to safety tell harrowing stories of men being slaughtered and young women taken away by the militants. ISIS began its rampage across northern Iraq 2 months ago. They call the land they've seized an Islamic State, and they've targeted anyone who isn't a Sunni Muslim. But the Yazidis have been singled out because the militants believe they're devil worshippers.
The images will stay with you for a lifetime and likely beyond. The tears of mothers and children being loaded onto a helicopter as they realize they may no longer be forced to flee for their lives. The bellow of a terrorist swinging a blade at the heads of those who refuse to change their religious beliefs. The heads of those who did not wish to acquiesce stuck onto the tops of poles along a city street. What has been going on for some time has finally come to global light. The persecution of Christians around the world and the call for America to do something about it and do it now. Welcome back to MidPoint. President of the Iraqi Christian Relief Council, Juliana Taimoorazy, and Vice President for National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Institute, also a 25-year veteran of the U.S. Army, Jim Carafano. Thank you so much both for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Juliana, I'm going to begin with you. There are late reports coming out that the U.S. may not have to undertake their humanitarian mission to rescue these refugees trapped on the Iraqis' Mount Sinjar because they say there are thousands fewer there than previously estimated, and those who remain are in a better state than expected. From your communication, the people that you talk to, do you get the same sense of what's going on over there?
Well, my communication, majority of it is with the Iraqi Christians on the ground. The Assyrian Aid Society of Iraq is reporting to us that the situation is completely getting out of hand. The refugees are continuously fleeing. They're going further north. They're going to Erbil. And Erbil, as you know, because of the airstrikes, the approach of ISIS was stopped, for right now at least. But the humanitarian crisis is devastating. There are people that are living in churches, they're sleeping on church pews in the parks, and I just received word late last night that there is grave need for 20,000 mattresses and bed sheets and blankets. So I understand that there are fewer Yazidis on the mountain Sinjar, but as far as the Iraqi refugees are concerned, Iraqi Christian refugees, there are about 200,000 of them that have been displaced. And this is half of the population of the Iraqi Christians. The Assyrian nation was 1.5, 1.6 prior to 2003. Today we have 400,000 left, and half of them are displaced.
Is it your opinion then, from the people that you're talking to, that perhaps not just the United States but the world itself is either not getting the entire story or is either trying to tamp the story down for some reason?
The leadership in Iraq is asking us in the West to be loud and clear that the greatest need they have in the long term is to have a safe zone in the Nineveh Plain area, in the Nineveh Valley. That is only not for Christians. This is going to be for all minorities, Shabaks, Yazidis, and Mandaeans as well as Christians. So what they're saying is that the world is silent, and it's very frustrating. It's silent strategically, and it's quite silent about humanitarian aid that they need. There have been Christians in Iraq have been waiting for tents, and there are not too many tents that are being sent to them even. There are a lot of them that are sleeping in construction sites on a plain bedsheet. So the frustration is escalating as time is passing by.
Jim, I guess a lot of people here, Jim, want to know why this has been going on for so long and why we're only hearing about it now, why we're only hearing pieces of this, because according to Juliana and so many others, this is not anything new, and the Americans and other nations around the world simply have been ignoring it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfectly valid question. I mean, in part, and we could go back and unpack this and talk about, there are many things that could have been done to ever prevent us from getting to this crisis stage, but, there's no do-overs, right? We are where we are, and what's much more important is taking care of people on the ground today than, who shot John and how did we get here. So, with refugee populations, the absolute best way to deal with them is to make them safe, and then to make it so they don't have to run or move. That's a much better solution. So clearly, the first thing to do with the humanitarian crisis is to limit the potential for military activities in which they're caught in the middle of, and so that's really important. And then what you really want to do is you want to be able people to kind of stay in the country, in an area, and bring aid to them rather than trying to take them somewhere else and just making them a homeless refugee population. And the sooner you intervene, the better off you are. I mean, I think the challenge for the United States has been having a stable Iraqi government, and really, I think the slowness of the U.S. government really to engage and work with the Kurds and the minorities in that area. Other than kind of getting in the game and stepping up the pace, there's kind of not much of much else you can say.
Knowing what we're into right here now and knowing the scope of this, it would seem that a lot of what you're talking about is we have to be able to militarily make and keep these people safe because technically we're in a war zone in so many places. Are we prepared for that, and what would we have to do in order to step up and get to that point?
Well, I think there's two different problems. I mean, in Kurdistan, I think there are forces on the ground which can defend the people of Kurdistan if they're adequately supported, if they have ammunition, air support, and other things. So the notion of, well, we don't have to rush an army there. We have to support the forces that are there. Southern Iraq's a bit more problematic because if you don't have a stable government to work with, it's very, very difficult to interject a military force into that to be supportive of that. So I think the problem really in the Kurdistan area has just been the slowness of the U.S. and the world response in terms of getting in there and supporting the people and giving them what they need.
Juliana, I think part of the question here is what many people would want to know is, and certainly from your perspective, the United States has advisors on the ground. We do not, the American people do not want to go back to war again. What then would you want? What would work at this point, knowing full well what the administration is facing and what the American public believes is the right thing to do, which is not go back to war?
Yes, I don't think boots on the ground is the answer. As the leadership also in Iraq is asking, is not only focus the airstrikes around the Erbil area where the U.S. interests lie, we also have to attack the ISIS wherever they are. So if they're in Mosul, if they're approaching Iran, from what we hear, they're approaching Iran as well. The Iranian border. So we have to go after them wherever they are to dismantle that organization. That's very critical. And also involving the UN. If we can get peacekeepers to go to the Nineveh Plain area and get the UN involved, get the world powers involved, that's very critical. And I agree with your guest that the slowness of this whole process is what has been frustrating for our people. And another very important element is that the minorities on the ground in Iraq are ready to fight. There are about 4,000 or 5,000 ready men who have signed up to be trained as security forces to protect their own. So as I understand that Peshmerga have the ability to do this. They've already been trained, but they need supplies and equipment to defend themselves and defend the region. And also the Iraqi military needs to regroup. We as minorities of Iraq need also our own forces. So that is a very important element, and I'm interested to think what your guest thinks about that.
Jim, I'm going to go ahead and put that to you.
No, I agree with a lot of that, and there's this non-debate about American boots on the ground. Look, it's not about Americans being tired or exhausted. That American people are both practical and compassionate and extremely resilient. If there's a need for American forces to serve our interests and to serve an end, we're going to do that. But the point is that's not the practical answer here. So it's a stupid debate and it's a stupid discussion, and we should just put it off to the side. The American boots are not practical in this thing. There are practical solutions here, and what's required is not a stupid debate about, well, should Americans be, rushing with bayonets in here. What is, there are practical things. We know what needs to be done. We just need to kind of sit here and slap people upside the head and say, why aren't we doing this, and why aren't we doing it faster?
Then let me ask this. I got about 2 minutes left for both of you here. Is one of the practical answers then, Jim, I'll throw this to you first, to bring the Christians here as refugees for America to welcome them here?
Well, it's always a better answer to take security and aid to the people and allow them to live in their homelands rather than to displace them. And it's not, you can't put them in a transporter and magically have them here. So making their nation safe, that would be a much better answer.
All right, Juliana, to you as well. Is that something that your organization and people want to see, or is Jim correct? Keep people at home.
Keep people at home. The Assyrians of Iraq their history is 6,700 years in the Nineveh area. We are that's our ancestral homeland there. We're the indigenous people of that land. The answer is we have to send aid and strategic moves. We have to make a strategic move to make them safer in their own homeland.
Hey, Jim, let me ask you this, because the comment came up earlier, attack ISIS. I believe Juliana said it, wherever they are. That's a scary thing right there. Can we really do that? Hello, Jim? I guess we lost Jim. Juliana, let me throw this to you. When you talk about attacking ISIS wherever they are, I got about 30 seconds left here. Would that mean, as far as you're concerned, do whatever it takes, airstrikes, whatever, but take these people out?
Airstrikes, I believe, is the answer. We have to go after these guys, because this is not a problem that is going to remain in Iraq. It's gone, as you know, in Syria, and it's found its way to Lebanon as well. So we really have to take control of this. And I think we should engage the Islamic world. We have to be in dialogue with Islamic leadership as well.
Do you think Islamic leadership wants to get involved?
I mean, they're killing Shiites. They're killing their own people as well. They're beheading their own children. So there's got to be a way of talking to the Islamic world that don't share the same ideology as the ISIS members do.
I think there are a lot of people who would hope that you are exactly right, but there hasn't been a whole lot of talking that's gone on over the years. I will tell you that much. Juliana Taimoorazy and Jim Carafano, thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue to follow this story.
Thank you so much.
All right. Terrible what's happening to those poor people. Later on this hour, as Ferguson, Missouri continues to explode, what should be happening on both sides to bring down the emotions until real answers are uncovered. And after the break, the spread of green on blue violence and what it means for the American war effort, right here on MidPoint.